Hello and welcome to Look North. Our top story tonight. Struggling to pay bills and going without meals, the university students using food banks as the cost of living rises.
For our UK students, the majority of them are living off the government maintenance funding that they're able to get, and the reality is that that's just not increasing in line with inflation.
We'll get advice from a student finance expert also tonight. A man pleads not guilty to murdering West Yorkshire police officer Sharon Bezhiniski 18 years ago. Driving forward research into MND, a new lab is named in honour of a former fundraising patient from Barnsley. And the best of BMX skills in Sheffield. We've been down to the onboard skate park where they're celebrating a big achievement.
And it might be looking like autumn out there, but it's feeling like summer for the next few days. I'll be back at the end of the programme with all the details on the weekend and a little look into next week as well.
Good evening and welcome to Friday's Look North. University students across our region say they're struggling to afford food, bills and accommodation because of the rising cost of living. It means universities are increasingly having to provide extra support for students away from the lecture theatre. A new report has found that a quarter of universities now have food banks and 1 in 10 give out food vouchers. Many are also providing free meals and hot drinks on campus, as 43% of students who responded to a survey say they've cut back on spending on food shopping. Research also suggests almost 1 in 5 students have considered dropping out of university or college because of increases in the cost of living. Sabia Pervez reports.
If you just want to grab a bag and then take whatever items of food you need.
Bradford University set up this free food pantry last year to help students struggling with the rising cost of bills and expenses. As students settle into a new academic year, the help is still needed. Even those with part-time jobs are finding it difficult to manage their increasing finances.
As a student, the cost of living crisis hit me quite hard. My wages just isn't covering the amount of fuel I need to get to uni, and it's not always covering my food bills.
If I didn't have this, I must admit it would have been really challenging.
I think that students are going to continue to struggle. For our UK students, the majority of them are living off the government maintenance funding that they're able to get, and the reality is that that's just not increasing in line with inflation.
It's not just British-born students who are struggling to cope with the rising cost of bills and expenses. Those who've come to Yorkshire from overseas are also finding it very difficult. At the Sikh temple in Huddersfield, a free hot meal is distributed to worshippers and visitors on a daily basis. Recently, they've seen a lot more international students sitting in their dinner hall.
We have about 250 to 300 students, international students coming every day in the temple. We feel very sorry for these students because they can't afford outside to buy the food. They come to the temple and we try to help them.
The students who've left everything to study here say England isn't what they expected it to be.
Many people believe that, we are getting money from back home. No, that's also not true, because our parents send us to become independent. So it's not, good to ask them again and again. So it's very hard, and accommodations prices, grocery prices, traveling expensive.
I found here it's quite challenging, and food prices are really high. Everything is rising.
I was so excited before to come here, but I find that it's too hard to survive in the UK. Bye!
With winter around the corner, students and staff are concerned about not just the rising cost of bills, but also how it will affect their studies and their future. Sabia Pervez, BBC Look North.
Yeah, stressful times for our students. Well, earlier I spoke to Tom Allingham from the student money-saving website Save the Student. I began by asking him if the fact that many students are living independently for the first time makes it harder for them when it comes to budgeting.
Yeah, absolutely. So findings from our most recent National Student Money Survey showed that 13% of students had never budgeted before. But even among those who have budgeted before, there's obviously a difference between budgeting in general terms, making sure that you have enough money to go out with your friends at the weekend or whatever, and then actually budgeting for a household, which is the big leap when you go to university. So even among that, 87% of students who have budgeted before university, it's a big, big jump to start budgeting for your entire life.
Yeah, what are students telling you they're having to cut back on?
Pretty much everything students are having to cut back on, really, with the exceptions of things that, are pretty much set. So we're talking rent and bills. Pretty much every aspect of a student's life is having to take some kind of hit, in particular food. So we found that in our most recent survey, the number of students who have used a food bank in the preceding academic year was up from 10% in 2022 to 18% in 2023. And the number of students skipping meals is now 64%. So 22% of students said they often skip meals to save money, and 42% of students said they sometimes skip meals to save money. So really is food that does seem to be the big thing that students are cutting back on.
Yeah, they're really worrying statistics, aren't they? What would you suggest a student should do if they're worried?
If a student's worried, there are a few things they can do. Number one is, if you aren't among the number of students who have been to food banks but feel like that is something that you might need access to, be aware that that is absolutely something that's on offer. It's not just reserved for people who are, for example, on benefits or have been recommended by a doctor. This is something that's available to anyone who is in need, and your university may even run one themselves. Other than that, if it's an absolute kind of cash flow issue that you have, you might be eligible for hardship funding from your university. So that's something that's worth asking them about. It is reserved for the people in the most kind of tricky, the most dire financial situations. But if that is you, then you could get a bit of extra funding that could be a few hundred or a few £1,000s that doesn't have to be repaid.
Tom, that's sound advice. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Next tonight, a man has pleaded not guilty to murdering West Yorkshire police officer Sharon Beshinivsky. The 38-year-old was shot dead after responding to reports of a robbery in Bradford in 2005. Piran Ditta Khan appeared at Leeds Crown Court this morning. Our social affairs correspondent Emma Glasby was there.
Piran Ditta Khan appeared in the dock here this morning for a short hearing. He pleaded not guilty to murdering Sharon Beshinivsky, who was shot dead at a travel agent's in Bradford in November 2005. The 38-year-old police constable had been responding to reports of a robbery along with a colleague when she was killed. A 74-year-old Piran Ditta Khan was charged with PC Beshinivsky's murder after being brought to Britain from Pakistan back in April. In court here this morning, he pleaded guilty to robbery and not guilty to 4 firearms offences, including possession of a firearm with intent to endanger life and possession of banned weapons, described as a submachine gun and a pistol. He is due to face trial here at Leeds Crown Court in February.
A man's been sentenced to life in prison for bludgeoning a woman to death with a dumbbell at his home in Sheffield. Emily Sanderson, who was 50 and a mother of 3, was struck at least 13 times in the attack in Crofton Avenue in May. When police discovered her body, they found that her killer, Mark Nichols, had wrapped her in packaging materials. The 43-year-old, who admitted murder, has been told he must serve at least 17 years in prison. The judge said Nichols had committed a truly wicked act. 3 men in their 20s have been arrested on suspicion of murder following an attack on a man in Barnsley last month. Scott Jackson, who was 42, was found unconscious near the Butcher's Arms pub in Thurnscoe in the early hours of September the 24th. He died in hospital on Tuesday. Police are appealing for witnesses. A company will go on trial next November over a crane collapse in 2017 that resulted in the deaths of 3 men, including 2 from West Yorkshire. 18-year-old Rhys Barker from Castleford and 36-year-old David Newell from Bradford died in the collapse at a construction site in Crewe. Falcon Tower Crane Services Limited has pleaded not guilty to 2 charges under the Health and Safety at Work Act. There were 9 reports of rape at the Harrogate Army Foundation College last year, a Freedom of Information request has revealed. In total, there were 13 allegations of sexual assault reported to North Yorkshire Police. The Army say they have a zero-tolerance policy on sexual offences. Olivia Richwald has more.
This college in Harrogate trains teenagers as young as 16 in basic soldiering skills. Its welfare and duty of care arrangements are graded as outstanding by the Education Inspector Ofsted. and students come here for either a 49-week course or a 23-week course. It's a mixture of military and educational skills, and twice a year there's a big graduation parade which the BBC has frequently filmed. These pictures were filmed here just this summer. The figures for sexual assaults were disclosed under the Freedom of Information Act, and they reveal that in the past 12 months ending in August this year, there were 9 reports of rape, 2 reports of sexual assault and 2 reports of voyeurism here at the college, as I said, in the last 12 months. Well, the Army has issued a statement, and that said, the Army is committed to rooting out all forms of inappropriate behaviour. We have a zero-tolerance policy on sexual offences. Any personnel convicted of a sexual offence will be dismissed. We have very strong safeguarding mechanisms at AFC Harrogate to ensure junior soldiers have the right support structures. This includes multiple methods of accessing welfare support, including confidential support lines. It would be inappropriate to comment on investigations which may be ongoing. Olivia Richwald, BBC Look North in Harrogate.
You're watching Friday's Look North. Still to come on tonight's programme. In Rugby League, it's an all-Yorkshire Women's Super League Grand Final this weekend. We'll look ahead. But first, a special ceremony has taken place at a leading MND research centre in Sheffield to recognise the incredible contribution of a former patient. Ian Pratt from Barnsley died in 2020 after living with motor neurone disease for 8 years. During that time, he set up a foundation which has so far gifted £160,000 to fund research at the Sheffield Institute for Translational Neuroscience. Nicola Rees reports.
I miss him and his laugh. I miss his laugh. He was so full of life.
It's been more than 3 years since they lost him, but it feels like yesterday.
There's an emptiness that he's not here anymore.
It was very difficult because I didn't really want to believe that he was that sick, but he really was.
Can you feel that, Ian, pulling?
I feel like a puppet on a string.
Ian Pratt lived with motor neurone disease for 8 years. The Australian who made Barnsley his home eventually lost his ability to walk, talk, breathe and swallow.
MND robbed him of a life because Georgiana was just born and all these symptoms started and no one could figure out what it was for about 2 years. He was a resilient, tough guy and fought this disease like you wouldn't believe, and his integrity and, yeah, he's missed.
Don't raise it up a bit, Ian.
In May 2020, at home with his family, Ian used his legal right to refuse treatment and asked for his breathing mask to be removed.
Because I love my daughter, my wife, I just got the mask.
I think about him like how nice and a good person he was. He was just withering away most of the time. It was difficult and hard to deal with.
Throughout his illness, Ian was a passionate disability rights campaigner and prolific fundraiser, raising money and awareness through the Ian Pratt Foundation. Ian's charity has so far gifted £160,000 to Sheffield Institute for Translational Neuroscience. Now a laboratory is being named in his honour.
Unveil this lovely picture of Ian. The Ian Pratt Laboratory will help us drive forward our research programs. Within that lab, we can make skin cells donated by patients into motor neurons, the cells that get damaged in MND.
I feel really honoured because it's not every day that your dad gets like a plaque and a laboratory named after him. It makes me feel like really proud and amazed of what he achieved.
He may be gone, but his legacy lives on, and it's just such an honour to know that Citran Research Centre, which will hopefully one day find a cure, and I'm just so proud that his legacy lives on. It's amazing.
Yeah, Nicola Rees with that report and an incredible legacy from Ian. Now, bring back mining and take Yorkshire Water back into public control. Two political promises from Reform UK and the Green Party. This weekend, they're both holding their conferences, and our political editor, James Vincent, has been catching up with their leaders. First up, Reform UK, who go into next year's election with a new name. Last time, they were the Brexit Party.
Yes, we're the renamed, rebranded Brexit Party, but we stand for exactly the same thing.
If you look at the last local elections, 6% of the share in the wards that you contested, 19% the time before comparable, it looks like you're going backwards.
Yeah, if you look at the national polls, and we're standing in 630 seats in the next general election, that's what we're focused on. We're in the countdown now, and actually we're going up and up, and that's why the Tories are starting to essentially nick some of our policies.
Net zero has been in the news, of course, because Rishi Sunak's rode back on their policies. You'd go even further, is that right?
Scrap the whole thing. We should use our energy treasure under our feet, our oil, our gas, our shale gas. You know, we're importing 5 million tonnes of coal from around the rest of the world. Why not use our own coal, for heaven's sake?
A party with a slightly different view on that are the Greens. One of their big policies this time around is to bring Yorkshire Water back into public control.
Would that make things any better?
Yes, it would, because it's clear that those companies have prioritised paying big dividends to their shareholders and big bonuses to their CEOs rather than investing in the infrastructure. And that's why we're in this mess, literally, because the infrastructure hasn't been invested in and now it's crumbling. And so by bringing the water companies into public ownership, that would allow the bills that we pay for our water and our sewage to go to actually providing a better quality service.
But when you get into power, is there a problem? In York, you were a coalition with the Lib Dems, and people roundly rejected that in the local elections this year. Labour swept the board, and now you have no councillors in York, which is one of our most green voting areas.
That happens to all the political parties. The fact is that in the last local election, we, I think, more than doubled the number of councillors where we were on administration. So, yes, there's a bit of fluctuation, but overall, that was a strong vote of support and enthusiasm for getting more Green councillors elected really all over the country.
Conference season is in full swing, and they're all looking for your votes. James Vincent, BBC Look North.
Yes, aren't they just? Now, let's change the pace because it is time for the sport. And our very dapper Paul Ogden is with us this evening, Paul. And a real cocktail of sport for us, I believe.
Yes, I'm glad you think so, by the way, Amanda. Thank you.
I
Don't go
approve.
far, by the way, because I've got some rugby league for you, as well as athletes in their underwear. That's coming up very shortly for you. First, mud, fumes, celebrations at Ollerton Stadium in Sheffield last night. Congratulations to Sheffield Tigers. They became British Speedway Premiership champions, overcoming an 18-point deficit to beat Ipswich over 2 legs of the grand final. It's the biggest comeback in playoff history and the Sheffield Tigers' first ever top flight title. I think those celebrations went on for a while afterwards. In rugby league, there's an all-Yorkshire Women's Super League grand final to look forward to this weekend, and it's taking place back in our region this time at the LNER Community Stadium, where York Valkyrie have home advantage against Leeds Rhinos women. There's even talk of a new record attendance being set for Women's Finals Day. To those involved, it will be no surprise.
The current crowd record for a women's grand final, 4,235 from the one at Headingley 2 years ago. But so much has happened in the women's game since. York's Community Stadium was the hub of so much good at the recent World Cup. England women's defeat to New Zealand, one of the most gripping matches of the whole show. This year, record female participation domestically has involved more than 130 teams from 57 clubs. On Sunday, it culminates in a rematch of last year's grand final, York against Leeds, both teams having sold out of their original ticket allocation.
10 years ago, we were trying to scratch for a team on a Sunday to play, and now, we come into training and there's under 16s, there's under 15s, under 14s all training at the same venue. It's going strength to strength is the Women's Rugby League.
We've seen payments coming to the women's teams this year, which is a huge step. I think year on year it's just a learning curve, isn't it? And as long as we're all willing to progress and push it forward, together, all teams can be a really good driving force.
The Rhinos find themselves in a 5th successive grand final, despite their difficult start to 2023 and having overcome an agonising defeat in the Challenge Cup final at Wembley, the women's game's first to be staged there. York have responded in the best possible way to last year's grand final loss. They haven't lost a single match all this Super League season, including 2 against Rhinos women. We may be lacking a men's team from our region in this season's top flight climax, but York Valkyrie against Leeds Rhinos women is bound to be just as thrilling a Super League Grand Final.
And we'll try and bring you the pick of the action from that Grand Final on Sunday tea time and on Monday's Look North. Finally, to boxers, literally, as you're about to see. Have a look at this. It's the pre-fight weigh-in presentation earlier today in Sheffield ahead of Josh Warrington against Lee Wood. That is how pleased Josh is with his Leeds United underpants and the fact that he made weight, of course. No problems either for Terry Harper and her opponent ahead of what should be an absolutely brilliant night of boxing at Sheffield Arena tomorrow night. That's the sport from me for now, Amanda, including a bit of acceptable flesh on a Friday.
Just about. It's acceptable, yes, thank you. OK, thank you, Oggy. OK, if I asked you to do a 180 bunny hop into a tail whip bar spin, would you know what I was talking about? No? Well, me neither. Well, it turns out they're BMX tricks, and in the future you could see seeing them in Sheffield. The onboard skate park is celebrating the next chapter in its history as it becomes an official British cycling BMX training club today. Tom Ingle reports.
Those of a nervous disposition, look away now. Miller Temple from Scarborough is just one of the elite athletes using onboard skate park in Sheffield.
I'm a BMX rider for Great Britain and professional. It's really important. It's the only way to progress the riders in the UK, so without it, no one would get there.
Onboard has nurtured so much talent, it's now become an official British cycling BMX training club. But in life, you don't stick every landing. And the real success of the organisation is found in the work they do to make sure everyone can get back up again. Some of the young people here might otherwise be excluded from education altogether.
A lot of them do struggle and potentially have things like ADHD, ASD, mental health issues. So concentrating in a classroom is really, really difficult. So here, the beauty of what Onboard's got is our classroom is the skate park. And we can have periods where they can be riding, you know, they can really release that energy, and then we can sit down and do some maths and English.
It's probably improved my mental health a lot. They've definitely helped me sort myself out. I've always been a bit sad and a bit grungy, but ever since I've started coming here, chilling with them all, it's helped me level out and be happy a bit.
Here, Finley can ride alongside friends pushing for international success.
I'm number 4 in the world of WTMX, or wheelchair motocross. It's basically wheelchair BMX. So I've been competing now for 3 years, and I was really lucky to be able to come fourth last year at the World Championships in California.
We need skate parks all around the country to be encouraging new riders and to show people what you can do, you know, in a wheelchair.
Whether supporting champions like Miller and Thomas, or helping everyone else with the ups and downs of normal life, the onboard skate park story has miles left to run. Tom Ingle, BBC Look North, Sheffield.
Wow, fabulous. Now, a rescued turtle has travelled thousands of miles from Yorkshire to Portugal to be released back into the wild. Iona was malnourished and dehydrated when she washed up on a beach in Scotland 18 months ago. Animal experts from Sea Life Scarborough took her into their care. Her health improved and the team have travelled to Azores in Portugal to release her back into the sea. And there she goes. Isn't she beautiful? Wow, gorgeous. Now on to the weather prospects. The weekend is nearly here, Keely, and I believe we've got some improvements on the way.
Absolutely, yeah, very mild weather for the weekend, actually for the first half of next week as well. So more on that in a moment. Let's have a look at some of the photos that you've been sending in, because we've had some quite sharp showers today, and we have had quite a few pictures of rainbows coming in. This one, an absolute stunner, and the second picture I think is actually a double rainbow. You can just about make it out there. The second rainbow is always slightly paler than the first, and the colours are in reverse, so thank you for that one. And it's looking like autumn out there, but I think it's going to feel a little bit more like summer over the next few days. Keep your pictures coming in to the Weather Watchers page first and foremost, but you can send them on social media as well, on Twitter at Keely Donovan and on Instagram, Keely.Donovan. So yeah, tomorrow in particular does look like a pleasant day. It's not going to be wall-to-wall sunshine, but there should be some decent spells of sunshine out there, and temperatures will be well above average for the time of year. Why? Well, we've got high pressure stationed to the southeast of the UK. It's been very warm across the continent. Southerly winds will drag up that mild air, and they will keep most of those weather systems at bay until I think around midweek next week. We are expecting some rain on Wednesday to cool things down. And there has been some rain, some sharp showery rain out there this afternoon, particularly in the west. You can see that on the radar, and that will continue for the time being. So through this evening, still the risk of some showery rain out there, but overnight we will see that rain tending to move away northwards, leaving us with largely dry conditions, some clear spells starting to spread up from the south, and temperatures only dropping back to around 14 or 15 degrees, not far off where daytime temperatures should be at this time of year. So let's have a little look at those high water times. In Filey at 8 minutes past 11, 9 minutes past 11 in Scarborough. So tomorrow for most of us looks like a dry day. There could be the odd spot of drizzle across the Dales, for example, and there will be some cloud around, but there'll also be some bright or sunny spells to be had as well. Fairly breezy out there too, but temperatures getting up to around 21 or 22 degrees. You're most likely to see the highest temperatures, I think, across parts of South Yorkshire. Some decent sunny spells here, I think. 22 is 72 Fahrenheit. And then into Sunday, there'll be a lot of cloud around, so we may well start off on a grey note on Sunday. That cloud will thin and break from the west with increasing amounts of sunshine spreading eastwards, and then the mild weather, the warm weather, will last into the early part of next week as well. Amanda.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Keely. That is it from us. Do have a lovely weekend. Hope you manage to get out and about and enjoy that lovely weather. But from all the team here, do take care, and we'll see you again very soon. Goodbye.